Welcome to the A.D.H. Deep Dive, the show that's not about ADHD, but is filled with proof it exists. My name is David J. Mund. I'm an actor, director, cinematographer, and imposter syndrome sufferer. And on today's episode, I talked to one of my best friends of about a decade, George Despotis. You'll learn very quickly how much George has to offer in the creative space, with stories about his work as a haunt actor, a director, a screenwriter, and a comic book artist. But you'll also hear about George's terrifying experience during Hurricane Ida, where he nearly lost everything. But enough spoilers. Thanks for tuning in to the A.D.H. Deep Dive. Let's get distracted now, shall we? So, I guess the easiest way for me to actually do some sort of transition into what we want to talk about is well, especially because you were saying that you were doing work things before you hopped in. When somebody asks you what do you do you how do you answer that? Do you tell? Go ahead.
I go with what I say I'm a property manager.
Yeah.
Which is what I actually do these days. I find it hard to just be because I guess I've never done anything really creative in a professional sense. I've not gotten paid to do anything creative. So I find it hard to be I'm a screenwriter and a artist. I find it hard to say all that stuff just because I haven't really gotten paid to do any of that stuff. So I just pretty much say what I'm getting paid to do.
How long have you been doing the property management stuff?
It's been, I think I started back in 2015 or 16.
So that's always been through family business, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when you were doing the haunt stuff, was that still the case? Were you doing the haunt while you were doing property management?
There was a very short period of time where I was doing both. I would work it was a zombie laser tag place, and I would do both. I would just go in there, do my zombie thing, and then whenever I didn't have
zombie
work,
thing. Hold on, break that down.
I get put in zombie makeup. I have a laser, a laser collar, and then all the customers have laser tag guns.
Dope.
And my job is basically to be a zombie.
Was this
in zombie apocalypse?
Sorry, was this in the city?
Yeah, this one was in Long Island City. I did work at a place out in Deer Park years ago. That was the same kind of thing. But yeah, this one, the one that I overlapped with my property management, was in Long Island City. Yeah.
So when you and Patrick talk about you guys working at a haunt, was that before then? It had to have been.
Well, me and Pat have worked at a few different haunts together.
Okay.
So that was all before the Long Island City place. He never worked at the Long Island City zombie place, but we worked together at the Long Island laser tag place. Yeah.
So that was then before the property management, though. So you had been This is why I kind of wanted to come back to it, because you said that you've never done anything creative in a professional sense, but for a while you had a string of paid acting gigs, right?
Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't know what it is about haunt acting that I never really categorized it as acting, even though there's a fair amount of that in it. Yeah. So I guess you're right.
It is. So in that sense, when you were doing that and you weren't doing the property management, when people ask what do, you just say I work at a haunt, or do you say I'm an actor? Or
I would say I work at a haunted house, or I'm a zombie. That's usually
I'm a zombie.
That's usually a good conversational thing. Yeah, I'm a zombie. And they're what do you mean by that? And basically what you just did is what would happen.
Well, right. I need to know more. You can't just say I'm a zombie professionally.
Yeah.
So that's a really relatable thing. Not in that I do nothing zombie related, but when I do cinematography or photo work or acting on the side, it's still hard for me to be I am these things, because I also do grocery deliveries. I do DoorDash and Grubhub, and so I'm that's where I actually earn most of my income. Right. But I have to present myself as something that I feel I'm not yet, and I feel like changing the way that I even talk about it has been the only way that I've been able to be like, oh yeah, I'm a director. Even though I make more of my money delivering Taco Bell to people's doors, like I'm a director.
Right.
That way I can put it on a business card. So like if
Right.
you get to the ideal, like I get to market myself as George, like what is that dream answer? Like if somebody says like, what do you do? Because I know that acting and writing is kind of paired into that, but like the way that I introduced the idea of you in this first episode was your sketch artist abilities. So like, does that fit in? Or I guess let me just close the question by saying, what do you like want your answer to be when somebody asks you,
Right.
what do you do?
Well, the original dream was to be a director, and life happens, and that path is kind of obscure to me at the moment. But uh, I don't know. I feel like I have too many dreams sometimes. So like I want to be, I definitely want to like direct any movie, like be it a independent thing or whatever. But I don't know. Like that's a hard question because there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of titles I like: screenwriter,
Right.
director, uh, I guess cartoonist. Yeah, I want to like right now. My dream is to make a graphic novel, right?
Sure.
Or make any like make a comic, and I've got a few ideas and all that. So, yeah, that's a tough question. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't even know what to put on a card. Like the ideal thing would just, yeah, I have no idea. That's a tough question.
Well, I'm glad that it's as difficult as a question for you as it is, because like there's no agenda behind it in that I'm just as lost. Like my entire first episode, and I talked to you through a text about like I went to start thinking I wouldn't know what I was going to talk about, but I found out that what I ended up what I discovered through just talking to myself out loud is very similar to my most recent YouTube video, which is like I have all these things that I want to do, but I feel like because I have dabbled in all of them, I want to do all of them, and that might not be feasible. And that stops me from doing all of them sometimes, where I'm like, I can't have everything that I want, so I don't do any of it.
Right. Uh, but I guess I mean, that's kind of screwing yourself over.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
that's correct. But I just mean, um, when you approach it that way, when you know that you have acting abilities, when you know that you have sketch artist abilities, when you know you have writing and directing abilities, how do you find ways to allocate time to the thing that you actually want?
Well, the way I try to think about it is I try to do something that can do that pretty much accesses as many things as possible. So the comic thing has a bunch of what I want to do in it, right? So there's the writing, there's the drawing, there's an element of like composition, so there's like, I mean, there is no physical camera, but there's always like you got to figure out a point of view and like what looks visually, appealing. So there's three things right there that I'm like kind of lumping into one activity I'm doing.
Right.
Uh, maybe it's a problem with like labeling. Maybe like we're screwing ourselves over by giving ourselves so many labels or trying to figure out what one label we
Yeah.
fit under. Uh, and maybe we should just do what we like to do and see what happens.
So that is, well, first of all, like the conclusion that I come to when I like am in my healthy brain, where I'm like, stop doing that. Like if you pin yourself down to one thing, then then you're only going to be this one thing, and then if you fail at that, then you fail at everything because you don't have a backup. But the unhealthy brain goes, yeah, but I want to identify as this thing so that I can sort of manifest it for myself by saying like I'm a director, so that people see me as a director. And then you get, especially when finances are tied to it, because at this point, like my passion is also my job, and if I fail at the one thing, that means I don't have a paycheck too. So I'm
Right.
like the failure of, like, let's say if I identify this week as a photographer and I have a really bad photo shoot, or I don't get paid for a photo shoot, then I'm like, then I'm not a real photographer. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
does that come across your, like, if you like when I asked you at the beginning, like when you say what do, you introduce yourself as something that you do for income, but that you don't identify as.
Right. That's true. I say that because it's typically when someone asks you what do you do, that's the answer they're looking for. Is like, what do you do for work? And honestly, like you saw how quickly I answered that first question, and then you saw how hard of a time I had answering your second question.
Yes.
So I'm not going to do that every time. I am just going to say I'm a property manager.
Sure.
And then, then if people are interested, they'll be like, "Oh, do you like it?" And then I could be like, "No, not really, but it's kind of what I'm doing now." And it's, I mean, if things in an ideal world, I guess, or maybe not even ideal, but like, hopefully, this is something I'll be doing for a while because it's a family thing and all that. So, I know I have to like come to terms with the fact that I have to do this for a while.
Is
But
well, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say that the good thing about doing property management thing, maybe it's a good thing, and I guess we'll get to why it might not be later. But like, I have there's a lot of free time, not a lot of free time, but there's like more free time than like a typical like 9 to 5 job offers.
Sure.
So I can dedicate a bit more time to what I want to do. Do I use that time wisely? That's a whole other thing.
Thank you for the transparency there, because in that sense, even though it's a totally different gig, the property management just at face value seems like a demanding gig. But the way that you introduce, and I'm sure that it can be taxing on you emotionally, but the way that you say that you have the freedom is the same type of freedom that I have with these delivery gigs, where I'm like,
Right.
if I don't want, like the other day I was sick, I'm still recovering from being sick. I took a test. It was not COVID. I still realized I felt unwell enough to go in, so I decided not to go in. If I was working a 9 to 5, I would likely be told, sorry, we're understaffed, you got to come in. But the way, if I introduce you know what? I guess maybe I'm realizing why your approach is. There's probably a little bit of pride attached to it because it is your family. Like, you are working, or maybe not, maybe pride's not the word that I'm looking for, but like, there's not as much resentment for what you do because it is part of your family. Whereas my DoorDash and Shipped gigs are like, I'm working for somebody else, I'm getting pennies on the dollar while corporations are getting big money. But like, am I wrong in my understanding of like,
I wouldn't, I mean, I guess I can see where you're coming from. I'm not, there's a lot of perks associated with what I'm doing for the family and stuff, and that obviously, like, there's a sense of obligation as well.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I'm not. I don't look at it. It is very hard to do. It is very hard for me to do that work, just because I never saw myself as like anything clerical. I fucking hate it. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of that stuff involved, and so it is very taxing, like emotionally and whatnot. But I'm thankful for it, I guess you could say.
You not having a standard 9 to 5 job outside of the obligations that you have as the property management or doing property management, and then your like personal obligations to yourself to sketch and write and so be it. You recently had a flood in your apartment. Well, it was about a year ago, correct?
Yeah, a year ago on the 1st of
Okay,
September.
just for the sake of the podcast, your quick summary of what happened, like, if you would.
Yeah, Hurricane Ida rocked my shit.
Rocked your shit in a big way.
I live in like a half basement apartment, so like I have like a backyard, but like the street on this. So like my backyard's in this direction, my street is the street is on this direction. The street is like above my apartment, right? And I have a driveway that inclines down into the garage, which is attached to my apartment. Anyway, long story short, the whole street flooded and sent a tsunami of street water down my driveway, through my garage, into my apartment. Within a matter of 15 minutes, every room in my apartment was knee-high water. And this is on top of like my like toilet and bathtub were already overflowing before like the street water
Oh,
intruded.
that's how you found out about it. I forgot.
Yeah, I mean, I was just sitting. I was literally about to. It was like I had one of the most pleasant days I've ever had before the flood happened. I like I was at the building doing my work thing, and it was like super like I literally only picked up some like envelopes, and that would like nothing was happening. I didn't really have to even talk to anybody, which is like ideal. Um, Picked that stuff up, had like a stroll home. It was like raining, but it was like just like a drizzle, so I wasn't getting like soaked. It was like a pleasant like walk home. I got home, I took a shower, I made dinner, I cleaned the kitchen. Like my whole apartment was like the best it's ever looked, basically. Like everything was like,
Damn.
clean. Like I was like everything was put
I'm
away. Like it
I'm sorry to laugh.
because like this is like the moment of like me having my life on point. Like the most on point I've ever had in my life was like this day. I like just sat down, like I like took a shower, I ate, I like, and even like my leftover food was in like a Tupperware, like sitting on the stove, waiting for me to put it in the refrigerator. Like everything was like, and then I sit down. A week prior, I got a PS5, and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
time to do some gaming, and I'm like, like everything was just so relaxed. And
So
then I
just for
just,
quick context, the date is it's what month?
it was
Yeah.
August 31st
Uh,
into September 1st. Like September 1st was
okay.
like the next day, I
Okay.
believe.
Of
Uh,
2021.
Yes, yes,
2021.
yes,
Yes,
yes, yes.
yes. Okay, okay.
So then I sit down to game, and then because like my couch is here, and my bathroom is like behind me. I just hear my toilet glugging, like glug glug glug, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I get up, and like the water, it looks like my toilet is on a cruise ship. The water's going like this, like inside the bowl, and I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on? And I made like a dumb video. Like I was like goofing around. I'm like, hey, cut it out. Like cut it out, toilet. And I'm like, all right, whatever. That's probably gonna pass. And I sit back down and I hear the glugging again, and it's like worse. And I'm like, uh-oh. And I look over, and my toilet's just filling, like filling from the and like overflowing, and my tub is filling from the drain. So this is how it all started. I'm like, oh shit. I call the lady upstairs. She's technically the super of the building, and I call her, and her and her like sons are down here with like mops, and we're trying to like keep the fucking sewage water contained within the bathroom. And that's when the tsunami hit. I just look behind me in the studio area, and I just see like a little river of water washing through the man. Yeah,
So
it was
when
a time.
when it started rushing into the building or into the apartment from the street, which is to the lamp side of your body, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, like there's
literally the door
the door that
the
leads
door
in.
leading to the garage
Right,
is right there.
right.
Yeah.
Um, well, first of all, did you like hear a crash of the door bursting open, or did it flood under? Was it coming from under the door? Because it all
So
came in through
so
the
base
garage, correct?
Yeah. So
Right.
basically, what happened was I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear like anything happen with the garage door, but what had happened was the bottom panel of the garage door flipped kind of like upwards, like whatever tension was like holding the garage door down, like the water rushing in, it like snapped the bottom panel upwards like that. So that part was like flipped open. And I came over here and I look over, and like literally everything, like all the furniture and stuff like that, was just like coming towards me, like slowly, like uh and I just lost it from that moment. I was like screaming. I
Sure.
was already upset, obviously, but like I was like, oh fuck.
Well, at that point,
And
it's shock and trauma. Now your body's in fight mode. Like,
yeah,
what do I
100%.
do?
100%. And in that moment, I there was decisions I could have made that probably would have like mitigated the damage, but like in that moment, I'm not in any position to actually
No.
do like to fully think through, you know, uh, after like the flooding kind of stopped and like everything kind of like came to knee height and like stayed there. I finally opened the back door to the backyard, and everything washed right out. Had I opened the back door sooner, it might not have been as bad, but it still would have been.
Still would have been bad. Yeah.
Yeah, still would have been bad.
So now that, of course, and well, first of all, two things. Sorry to make you relive that, but I'm glad that you.
Hey man, I've relived it several times, like
every
more
day.
than
I'm
several
sure
times.
you live in the
I feel
space
like,
currently that it happened.
dude, I like the couple months after, I was literally having dreams where I was back, like I was having not only nightmares of like me being there on that night, but like literal nightmares of me fixing the apartment, moving back in, and then it happening again.
Yeah.
Like that was the nightmare. So yeah. Me telling the story is like peanuts compared to that.
And I'm just gonna talk directly to the viewers at this point. The most important part of this story, though, is that he did save the PS5. He was able to save the PlayStation 5. Only got it a week prior.
It was the first thing I grabbed, and then I grabbed my my CPAP sleep apnea machine.
So
PS5 comes first.
So this room that you were in was the first one to receive maximal damage because that's where everything hit, right?
Well,
or did everything flood off to the other side before it reached?
Well, I mean, the way water works is like
the nearest exit
came in through here, but everything rose at the same time. It was that fast. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah. But I guess I just mean
the entry point.
I just mean to say the place you're in right now is your creative space.
Mm-hmm.
When, of course, I haven't relived. I've never lived through a flood, but I've had to leave.
I mean, had you been visiting a couple weeks?
I have that on my note. I'm so glad you said that.
You were here. What was it? 2 weeks prior.
2 weeks before that, I was in New York City to shoot a music video in Brooklyn, and I needed a place to stay, so I slept in George's office.
Literally where the water was coming.
Where the door was opened and all the water rushed through. So the stuff from George's garage would have crushed my body.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it was like 7, so you probably wouldn't have been sleeping, but your equipment probably would have been in that room.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
Yeah. And don't worry, I still have your button down.
I was just gonna ask that. Do you still have my fish shirt?
Yeah, it's somewhere. It's in with all the clothes that got washed. So
I missed that shirt. It's a great shirt.
But it definitely got soaked through with the New York City street water. So
I can cross off the "I slept on the floor" note. So
you would have been floating on top of the air mattress.
It might have been a peaceful sleep. Honestly, it's like a waterbed because I was on an air mattress and it just raises me up. There might have been no bugging. I think the thing that might have threw me off was your maniacal screaming. That might have woken me up.
Yeah. That would have probably clued you into something going horribly wrong.
So the reason I brought up the creative space though is like I've never experienced, of course, a flood, but in totally unexpected breakups or last minute financial decisions where like I have to move very quickly and I wasn't expecting, and you have a creative space where you feel like it's yours and you feel like this is where I thrive. When that's taken away from you, like because you had to you basically stayed with family for a long time before you got your apartment back. Like when you don't have what feels like your comfort zone creatively, like what does that do to your creative progress?
It definitely fucks it up. Yeah. My new creative space, I guess, which is where I did most of my drawing and whatnot at my mom's place, ended up being like on the kitchen table, which in the right circumstances could be fine, but the way I like to do creative stuff is I kind of like try to block everything out and then focus, and it was just incredibly difficult to do that. It was rough, and I found, I mean, that was a hard time anyway. Like I was emotionally all over the place, I was very grumpy, so and I through no fault of anyone else's own, me sitting and trying to do creative stuff, I just it just became aggravating, so I had to like really pull back on it to avoid associating doing creative stuff with being frustrated. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, and I think I'm struggling with getting it back a little bit now that I'm back.
Yeah. So, obviously, being in a public space with your family while you're trying to sketch or write isn't conducive to the creative progress. But now that you have you're at least back in your apartment and you have a space dedicated to your own, are you trying to find creative ways to process that, or are you just trying to get creative again to move on from that?
Um, I'm trying to get creative again, period. And I think that no matter what, whatever I do, I draw on. I can't help but draw on shit that has happened to me, because whatever I start writing or whatever I start drawing, it always ends up being about whatever I'm thinking about anyway. So my struggle is getting creative again. So yeah, I mean, it's been tough trying to get back into it, into the flow of it, because like before the flood, I was pretty, I was pretty creative pretty often. But yeah, man, processing trauma is a bitch.
You're involved in a writing class that you've also been trying to get me involved in. It's an annual class or they do it by semester, but you've done it multiple years, correct? Are you participating in that anymore since the flood, or do you plan to get back into it? Or
I plan to get back into it. I haven't been back since the flood. There is another class I want to take this semester that focuses on comics specifically.
Okay.
But I think I'll always go back to that class. It's fantastic. So if not this semester, I'll probably go back next semester for sure. Are you going to join?
I don't know, man. Okay, so literally the thing that I say to you every time, which I guess this is as vulnerable a space to talk about it as any, is just money constraints. Like, that's it. There's interest beyond interest. Because I want to make investments in my writing capabilities. I want to make investments in my camera equipment, my editing equipment. There are so many. This ties back to the thing we were talking about at the beginning, where it's like, there are so many things that I want to do that I feel like if I allocate money or attention to one of those things, that it takes away from the other things. So I'm like,
Yeah.
if I wanted to spend money on a camera, I could be like, man, but do I really need a camera, or do I need to work more on my writing abilities? Should I be paying for this class? Like, what is the better investment in myself?
Right. And
So
that's how you got to look at it, is maybe it takes away from it in the short term, but in the long run, the benefit you get is like you can, like, I've taken it multiple times. You can take this class once, and what you'll get from it is invaluable.
of course.
So I would say that it is a damn good investment. And also, it only lasts. You'll only be taking away from everything else for the duration of the class.
It's only financial. Like, there's no mental barrier where it's like, I know full well that the time investment is worth the money in gold. Right. Or worth its whatever the phrase is. I don't give a shit.
Right, sure.
I just mean, like, it's specifically the money thing itself, where like this $400 or whatever it is, or give or take, could be spent on other things that like could help progress me in the same way. Like,
right.
I
guess that's just what do you want to focus on is like the big,
I don't know, man.
That's what you got to figure out.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Really,
it seems that you want to write. Like, it seems that you've done some writing, lately. You come with ideas and stuff like that. And
yes, I am such an ideas guy. I have ideas, and then I don't know if it's I don't like fleshing them out, or I can't flesh them out. I guess the healthy brain says I can't say the word can't. I just don't. So like, I know for sure, and I did literally just talk about this in my most recent YouTube video. I know for sure I don't want to full-time be behind the camera. I think if I get to that dream goal career-wise, I'm hands off the camera, and I would like to direct, but I started this journey wanting to act, and I feel like if I want to direct things that come from my own ideas, then I have to be able to write them. But if I am able to write those ideas, then I have to be able to show someone how I imagine the images by composing them in a cinematic way. So I have to know more about the camera. But then I don't know, man. Like, It's what's the phrase? Master of none. What is it? Jack of all trades,
Nailed
master of
it.
none.
Yeah, you got it.
What is it? What is it? What is the
You
saying?
got it. That is actually it.
Oh,
It
it is
is
Jack of all trades,
master of none. But
master of none.
the path you took to get there was great.
Whoops.
But the thing about this class is not like it's not just the fact that you're writing your thing. It's you're also reading what everyone else is writing.
Yeah,
And that is itself amazing. Um,
Now you also went to college for this, though, correct?
my degree was in like film studies,
But it was
so
relevant to your trade. As
I
in,
guess
you had the college experience of being around peers in that way. I haven't even
yeah,
gone to college.
right. But like the I don't know. I'm not to get too into it. I'm not the people who a lot of people who I went to school with were I don't know. They were like I didn't get along well with a lot of people, I guess.
Sure.
Creatively. So it was a weird experience. I wouldn't even say you missed out, you know.
But this class in specific, you feel like lends itself to
Yeah.
your career goals, not just based in writing.
Um, it's definitely made me a better screenwriter, for
Mhm.
sure. And yeah, I guess so, yeah. Because I mean, I'm a better writer now than I was when I started. And it's a lot easier. It's writing a screenplay is not daunting to me anymore. It used to be like, oh shit, like I don't even know if I can write a script or a screenplay or anything like that. But now it's not. It demystified the whole process to me, and now the idea of writing a script is like, oh, like it's just like whatever to me now. So I can sit down and like confidently write a script, and it's
Now,
it got me to think about like story in a different way too, or like in a better way, I should say.
you're already answering the question I was about to speak. So I was just saying, in what ways are you better? Like, what ways has it made you better?
Well, because when you read other people's scripts, you're not only are you enjoying what they're doing correctly, you're better able to pick out what they're maybe not doing so well. Because there's a critique element to the class. You read whatever pages someone wrote. Everyone reads them, like everyone gets cast. So there's a little bit of acting too. So I think that's another part of the class you'll enjoy because you'll get a role,
Yes.
I'll get a role. We'll have to read it through. And then after we read it, it's like the person who wrote the script doesn't talk. Everybody else talks about
I
the
love
script.
that. I love that and hate that.
It's great, man. And I gotta say, it's such a supportive environment. The guy who teaches it, Gary Richards, is like one of the nicest, most supportive, creative guys ever, and he makes this environment of like just supportive, creative critique, and it's great. It's great. I know everyone talks about the pages and what could be done, and then after that, then the person who writes, everyone can ask them questions and talk, see what they were thinking, and then my favorite part was asking them questions about my pages, like, did this happen? Did I do this effectively? All that stuff. And then you get to do that with other people's scripts too, which is awesome.
Which is why I turn to you exclusively when I have ideas. It's because I know that you have experience, even just critiquing other people's like pages. Even though I have some like talented writers around me, I feel like the way that, and it just also helps that I've known you for over 10 years, but like around 10 years, I'd say. The way that some people approach unfinished work is too sugary. They're like, oh, wow, you're really onto something. It's like,
right.
Yeah, but what am I missing? Like, what do I not have? Like, because I know it's not just my imposter syndrome that says I suck. I know that there is some missing piece. What is it as a viewer? Yeah. And you're very willing to catch that.
I hate when people do that. And but yeah, because everybody in the class wants to make a good story and they want to help everyone make a good story.
Right.
So everyone's like nice about it, but like also pointing out where things are going wrong or where things might go wrong or what's not working with like the characters and like we break it apart and like fiddle with the pieces and yeah, if anybody needs a script doctor, hit me up.
Script doctor. I do have a question that I kind of want to close on, but I feel like you're very talented at social media in a way that you don't quite realize yet. One of my favorite
your question's already shocking to me.
This isn't even related to the question. This is just something that I want to pick up on. Basically, I'm asking you to plug yourself, but I want to compliment your Instagram before. One of the things that I really enjoyed when I moved away from New York City, because I lived there for a year and then I just had to move back because it was too expensive. I really got to feel like I had some view of the city from your like 30-second still image videos where like you I guess you could probably better explain what it is that you did, but I really enjoyed you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of say what you did. Yeah.
There was a lot of like I haven't done that in a while. And I did it when I went to London too. I just like snippets of like real life. So I just like if I'm in a place where I like what's going on, I just film it and I don't touch it. I don't put music on it or whatever. I just let it be there, like someone standing there.
It's like a moment in time. You set up an image of something aesthetically pleasing. You seem to know your leading lines, like because you know a bit about photography as well. So it's always like some of the things that I've enjoyed the most have been like down like the long view of a street and you see some cars passing by and then some people but you just hear the surrounding sounds. You're not talking or narrating over it. So I like that about your social media in a way that I don't think however
I might do that again. I haven't done it in ages.
If somebody were to go check out your Instagram thinking that is what they would find, that is not what they would find. There would be a lot of pencil nipples, lots of nude art. Where does that come in? Where does that come into play? Like figure drawing?
I like drawing naked people.
But these are models. Like you are sitting in classes drawing.
Yeah, I around the same time I started taking writing because I guess the whole goal was to eventually do a comic book, like write and draw a comic book. And I knew my writing needed work. I knew my drawing needed work. So around the same time I started taking the writing class, I also started taking figure drawing classes, just to figure out pose and anatomy and all that stuff. And I think it's worked out kind of well because I've kind of gotten better at both around the same pace. So yeah, that's pretty much where it came from. And I find that it's actually like super. Like before the pandemic, I was going pretty regularly. It was very much like my yoga, I guess you could say. Like, I would just show up and just zen out. We also we haven't not even touched on ADHD.
I know. That's why I mean like hopping into the conversation was the best way rather than being like, "Hello, welcome to the ADHD podcast." I've already done the brunt work behind episode 1, setting it up so that we can phase out of the conversation by saying, now the reason we talked about all of that, rather than saying what we're going to talk about today is.
I see.
That way, because I feel like I'm noticing, at least with now to address the elephant in the room, this is the A.D.H. Deep Dive. And the intention behind this podcast was just to kind of highlight well, you know what? It's even hard for me to say what the intention was behind it. The intention behind it was narcissism, honestly. I want a podcast. I've always wanted a podcast. I want to talk to people and just shoot the shit, but it's really hard to just have a shoot the shit podcast unless you already have some decent following, which I guess there are. You brought up a friend of yours, or I think either a friend of yours or somebody that you listen to or know that happens to not be that, as in like they were a shoot the shit podcast before they were a personality. My view is like, you gotta have a personality before you're a shoot the shit, because I can't trust this person. You know, I don't want to just sit in a random conversation. I want to have some intentionally interesting conversation. So when I wanted to do a podcast, I was like, well, what do I actually know a lot about? I don't know a lot about ADHD, but I've lived my entire life with ADHD. I was diagnosed with it when I was very young.
Right.
So when I knew that I wanted to do a podcast, I knew that I could forgive myself by getting off topic by saying, well, I have ADHD. So like, if I don't talk about the intentional thing behind the subject today, like, so be it. More importantly, this podcast is talking to creative people, and, you know, maybe you might not see it as this, but like, I do try to gain wisdom from you in some way. I seek your approval a lot. So the guests, the guests that I plan to have on are people that I feel like could help me in my struggles with ADHD peripherally by like explaining the way that they process trauma or the way that they hold themselves accountable creatively. But I mean, do you want to talk about
when you learn all that stuff? Let me know, because I don't know shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of my biggest. Yeah, I never got officially diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure it's what I got. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And yeah, I feel your pain. Like convincing yourself, not even just convincing yourself, because you're already convinced you want to do what you want to do. You know what you want to do.
Well, I know there are lots of things I want to do.
All of the many things you want to do.
Yes.
It's the getting yourself to actually do it. That's the struggle.
Mm.
I always think of it as like momentum. There's like initial momentum. Like what's the word? Like kind of like takeoff momentum. No. I'm stretching this metaphor. But yeah, escape velocity.
Escape velocity.
Escape velocity. Like getting your ideas to escape velocity is the struggle.
I'm mixing up escape velocity and terminal velocity.
Escape velocity is when like a shuttle, like a rocket, escapes the Earth.
Oh, so it's the force needed to exit the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Okay, and terminal velocity is the fastest speed at which you will fall. You are then fully under gravity's weight, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Where was this analogy?
Because getting my ideas to hit escape velocity is the struggle.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
You were never, like you said, you were never diagnosed, so there was no like medicative route.
No, the only time I was on medication was in college when I went to a neurologist. He was pretty much just like, I just told him my experience. He didn't really, there was no like screening, I guess. There was no like little test or whatever, like questionnaire I filled out. There was nothing like that. He just heard me talk and he was like, well, you either have depression or ADHD. So here's some Wellbutrin. And I was like, a week later, I'm like, I hate it. And he goes, okay, here's some Adderall. And then I was on Adderall for a while. And you know, we talked about this before. I loved it until I didn't.
Yep.
And then I stopped taking it, and I haven't been on it since. But I like the idea of there being something that will just get my brain to work with me for once, and which Adderall did at the beginning for sure.
Yeah. There is a laser focus like quality that some of those drugs can have in your attention. But then, like you said, until they don't, when they start laser focusing your attention on all of the negative shit. And then it basically, if there's millions of voices going on in your head, Adderall goes whoop, and grabs one and pulls it in unless you focus on it. And a lot of the times, if you have ADHD, like millions of those ideas are creative, and they're really good. And so when you get to that's where hyperfixation comes, is sometimes your brain just does it. And instead of taking like a percentage of attention here and a percentage of attention here, and then equally distributing it, it focuses all of its attention on one specific thing. But when it grabs one of those shitty voices or shitty ideas and you focus all of your, like some of mine, my hyperfixations also latch onto like politics and doom, like when I start to doom scroll, I know a lot about the climate disaster.
Right.
I know a lot about the political turmoil.
Right.
But I love learning about those things. Sorry, go ahead.
How long were you on Adderall?
No, so I was not on Adderall longer than I was on Ritalin. Ritalin was the big one when I was a kid. So it was, I was 7 to 12 years old. I was on Ritalin, and that was when you're like starting to understand even what emotions are. So all I really remember when I was younger is being, like a zombie. Right. Where like because when you're young, your ADHD manifests itself in your energy. So you're like really hyper, and you're like bouncing off the walls, and you're running around. And I just kind of like just sat, just thought and observed, and like I didn't have a big appetite because I was focused on how uncomfortable I was. When I got a little bit older, that's when the Adderall came into play and my anxiety medication Lexapro. And Adderall was, I want to say 6 months to a year in total. I know I didn't fully stay on it for a full year, but I was on it long enough for the effects. Because you're supposed to go like a certain period of time. I think it's like 3 to 6 weeks before, where like you're gonna feel nauseous. You're gonna feel, or at least that's a lot of the common side effects. So like dizziness, nausea, headaches, all that kind of generic stuff. And then it works its way into your system and it starts to work. Yeah. And Adderall did work for me for a good 5 of those months. Yeah. But then I was just on it and it opened itself up to upping dosages. And when that possibility made itself clear to me, I was like, I don't think I want to keep doing that, because then you have to up it again and up it again. And I found out that Lexapro wasn't working for me at the time, which, spoilers, Lexapro sometimes makes your penis not work. It's not too fun. But now I'm actually on a depression and anxiety medication that works very well for me, like no other drug has. And it's been about a year and a half that I've been on it, and I still believe in it fervently. Cymbalta, for what it's worth. But I don't have any ADHD medication now. So my anxiety and depression really feels leveled out in a way that it never has. But my ADHD feels like more scrambled than ever. Right. So I don't know if you even asked me a question, but there's your answer.
Nice. I never got that with Adderall, what you were saying before about hyper-focusing on like the negative stuff. For me, it was literally just like I had forward momentum with everything I was doing. Like I was just like, I could make a decision, and then I was like, I just do it, and then on to the next one was great. And then when I started feeling it not working, that's when I don't know, it was like heartbreaking almost, because I was like, oh man, something that's actually getting me going. And then it kind of like started petering off, and I was like, god damn it, it was fun while it lasted, but
then what's the next answer? Raising your dosage?
Because there's also negative effects associated with it. I literally felt, I became very aware of like this part of my arm, it was weird. Like I felt like a tingle, not like tingle, like I don't know, I was just very aware of like there and like behind my knees. So and it was especially when like,
did you take Adderall or ecstasy?
Undetermined. It was especially when it was wearing off. It was like I was aware of that part of my arm, and then like I would clench my teeth. And my appetite was destroyed. So I was just like, this is probably not a great thing to keep going upwards. And I at that time I was still like, my neurologist just didn't do a lot of screening, so I was like, it's probably not a great idea to follow him into the Adderall abyss. So
I do feel like this is now, first of all, I want to have you back on the podcast because we talk all the time anyway, so like we might as well monetize it. Cool. Not that this is even getting monetized. This is literally the second episode that hasn't, and the first one hasn't even been released yet. But I guess a heavy hitter to go out on creatively. When have you how do I want to ask this? I'll say what I wrote. When have you failed creatively? Like, what is a creative... Because I do genuinely believe that failure is very important to success. Like, you have to fail in order to even learn what that is. Like, is there one that sticks out? And I don't mean just generally in life, but is there like a creative pursuit that you like really put your heart into and you're like, that bombed and it's my fault?
Um, I guess I have two answers. What my main ongoing failure, is the fact that I have not completed anything. Or like, aside from the screenplays or whatever, I haven't like made it into a movie or made one into a comic, which I'm working on. But I feel like I feel like I fail when I don't consistently work towards what I want. Um, that being said, I was actually just talking about this with my sister, but I would say it was more than a few years ago. Back when I think when I first moved into this apartment, so it was like 2013, something like that. I did a 48-hour film festival with some friends, and the finished product was garbage. You know, it was bad, but
Like, you made a film in under 48 hours?
yeah. I didn't expect it to be like an amazing film. I expected it to be an experience that we all not only had a good time with, but like would be the first of many and all that stuff. And I ended up, yeah, like the finished product was garbage. But then I had a conversation with a friend who was involved with it, and she was very unhappy with our dynamic on set for the duration. I had no idea during the process that she felt so strongly or negatively about the whole process, and it kind of shook me a lot, you know, at the time when she told me, because I was like, I thought we were all having a good time. I thought, yeah, it didn't work out. Like the thing was garbage. We all had a good time, and maybe we could do more of these. But yeah, she was very, yeah. It seemed like she didn't have a good time, and it was like mainly directed at me. The reason she didn't have a good time with it. So I guess I felt bad.
Was the criticism that you didn't do your part, or that you maligned her in some way?
The criticism was that I steamrolled, or I was very stubborn, and which, from my point of view, I don't think I was, but that's my point of view. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I don't know what it was about that time, and that's because like me and her we've worked creatively in the past, and we've had our differences in the past, but I don't know what it was about that one moment that just kind of rocked my I guess my confidence in the whole thing, but I don't even know if that's like a creative failing as opposed to like a interpersonal hiccup.
The second half of that is like, what specifically did you take away or learn from in that moment? So like the next time you were ever in a creative collaboration that felt similar to that in any way, even if it's not directly adjacent, like, did that stick out in your mind during that project? Like, I was deemed overbearing or bossy in this situation, so now I'm going to pull back here. Like, how did that affect you in your next or going forward at all?
I haven't had many collaborative, creative experiences since then. But now I guess I'm just like, because like during that time, I didn't feel like I was being, I felt like I was being aware of my behavior during that 48-hour film festival. And I felt like I was listening to what everyone else was saying and making concessions. And, there was whole parts of that, what we filmed, that I didn't think was a good idea, but everyone else was excited about it. So I was like, all right, let's do it. Because everybody else but me is excited about this. Let's just do it.
What was your role for this project?
I directed it, and then, well, when we were coming up with ideas, I came up with like the story, and then I ended up directing.
So you were the director, though.
Yeah.
So there was a not position of authority, but a position of leadership in a way that you may have had to make some difficult calls to be brash with people.
Yeah, and I didn't even make all the difficult decisions I wanted to make, because I wanted everyone to have a good time, and I wanted to everyone to feel like they contributed. But you know, I mean, she had a different experience, and I can't fault her for feeling the way she felt, and she was honest with me, which I appreciated. But it did, like, it made me second guess, I guess, my own judgment in those situations. Maybe more than it should have. I don't know.
That type of outcome, though, in a creative collaboration is what terrifies me about directing. I keep referring to the specific YouTube video that I just made, but there's like a little chunk about it or in it where I'm like, of course I want to be an actor because, there's a vanity behind it. You're on screen, you get to portray somebody other than yourself. Cinematography is very technical. Doing PA work can be sometimes humiliating in a way because you feel a little deflated. But when it comes to being a director, it's like all I'm really doing as a director is trying to lead a team of people, or at least just nudge a team of people in a direction that I think would be best suited for the final outcome of the project. And if people disagree with me, like, I'm either nervous that I will be too weak and timid to be like, you know what, screw my creative idea, let's just do whatever you want, even though I don't think it's a great idea. Or it'll be the other way where it's like, no, I'm sticking to my guns here, I think this is a good idea. And then the perception is that he's stubborn and like things have to go his way. So like a director, as much as it feels like that's where my ideals most align, like creatively, where I feel like I would really shine the most as a director, I'm really intimidated by calling myself a director because there is that like, oh, he's either a dick or he's one of the easy guys that I can just push over,
Right. I do you think I mean, my worry about all that is the actual effect I'm having on people. It's not so much the perception. I feel bad for potentially causing my friend to have a bad time.
I see.
After the experience where she told me about everything, I went to, like, Patrick was also involved in all this. I asked Patrick, I asked my sister, everybody else. I was like, was I an asshole? Like, was I a real big dick? And they were all like, at least to them, they were like, no, I didn't think you were more of a dick than usual, which, there's a baseline dickishness, I guess.
There's a baseline dickishness.
Yeah. But they're like, no, yeah. And everyone else had a good time. It was just, I think something about me and my other friends' dynamic, hit her in a weird way.
Sure.
And that's where I felt bad. And I also, for me, there is an element of, like, I want the experience to be a fun one, no matter what we're making. I feel like so much of what I try to do is pursuing, I want it to be somewhat fun. Yeah, I want whatever I do to be somewhat fun. Right. And the fact that I guess I ruined that for somebody, that's what hit me. It wasn't so much the perception, like, oh, he's a dick, he's or a pushover or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know.
Well,
did I answer your question?
Final question. Rather than your creative failure, what was your biggest creative success?
I would say finishing all the screenplays I finished.
Yeah?
I finished 4 screenplays. Pack lunch included.
I was gonna say pack lunch included.
Yeah, that's the longest one I've written. Yeah.
How many pages?
100.
Because we're gonna be doing. I'm saying this to the audience, but George and I and our group of friends are going to be doing a Zoom reading for the first time. Like you said, he's had this done since before 2021, so you wrote it during the pandemic.
But I started writing it before the pandemic. And none of us have even had a glimpse at it. I know nothing. I know nothing about the plot. I know nothing about any of the characters beyond that they're based on our characters that we created in this universe. Which actually, George's left shoulder, that's the punchy flag.
That's the punchy flag. That's his packed lunch character. And I will say that we have referred to you as a talented sketch artist, That's a doodle. That's not one of George's sketches, okay?
Just
George
a
is a
doodle.
very, very talented artist. That goofy little face with cross eyes is not the extreme of, or the limit of George's.
Did you make that thing behind you?
What?
The big eye poster.
That? Wait, this?
That, yeah.
No, that was a... You think I could do that? No, that was a $5 tapestry from Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
I made this, which is actually relevant to you. Do you know what this is?
Hey, is that the RFK bridge?
Yeah,
That's my bridge, baby.
I took a picture. This is an angle that I took a picture from when I was walking with you that day, and then I just painted that picture.
That's one of my two favorite bridges.
Yeah.
Of all time.
What's
that's awesome.
What's your other favorite bridge?
The Hell's Gate. That's the other one. That's like that red archway bridge. That's like also at a Story Park.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So writing the screenplays, eh? That's where you
man,
feel like
I'm really happy. Even the first one I wrote, I'm very happy with how they all came out, and I feel like my confidence in my writing ability has just taken off.
Is one of them this?
I haven't finished that one yet. No, I don't know if I'm ever going to finish it, but maybe someday.
I won't show the camera there, but there is an unfinished George work that I got a glimpse of on the flight back home from New York City when I stayed with him that week.
Yeah.
Okay, George, plug something. Do you have any specific piece of art or home for art that if people watch this and listen, you could send them to that you want?
I mean, I'm the big bad George on everything, but I guess just Instagram. I don't post any. I don't really don't do much on Instagram these days.
He doesn't.
If I ever do, it's probably gonna end up there. So
the big bad George.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, we're gonna do an actual ending, but stay on the line. So for the end of the call, hey, thank you. Thanks, George, for being my first guest on the A.D.H.Deep-Dive. Hey, no, you know what? We're gonna leave this on. How do you feel it went as the first guest?
I feel it went great. I think that we either need to talk more about ADHD or you need to change the title.
I think he's probably right. Okay, well, for the viewers, love you. Thanks for coming.